reader, you're a great reader. And before I call upon the distinguished speakers for this evening, let me briefly tell you, we have lined up programs till September, but I will just only tell you two more events. What's happening this month is tomorrow, the Saturday, 16th of July, is again paid program, but all NGOs, MMA takes quite a bit of corporate social responsibility. This is an event which is focusing a seminar on development sector organizations for civil society organizations and social entrepreneur. We strongly believe today you have to do a good job. You must understand your country, what it is. And not only that, the social sector is the one which significantly contributes to the growth of our country, and we need them because huge amount of public expenditure and also CSR funding, it all comes through the social sector. So we are bringing out a full day seminar to really understand. Tamil Nadu, she will be talking to us SDG. Then we have Krishna Swami will be talking to us all the nitty-gritties of how to manage your CSR funding account. We have chief guest, Mr. Jawahar IAS. He will be talking to us in the inaugural session. We have outstanding galaxy of speakers will be talking all through the event. So please make it a point to watch it live. And it's already full. We have more than 225 registrations for this event for all NGOs. And we are really delighted that a big number of NGOs will be able to do some impact on them in terms of how to bring in professionalism and managing their accounts and how to really get connected to the best organization to get your CSR funding. Then on Tuesday, we have event on 19th of July, management lessons from Tirukkural. We strongly believe every month we do an event on Tamil. This event is on Tamil, and the gentleman, Dr. Prabhakaran, is one of the leading corporate leaders from USA. And I think our people, when they go to USA, they become really expert in Tamil. Not that we don't expert in India, but they love to show their thing. And this man has written some fantastic books on Tirukkural and the way he speaks on wisdom of Tirukkural. And so it's going to be a very lovely event. It's an online event. It's happening Tuesday 19th at 6 p.m. Please log in to watch it. Coming to today's event, Read and Grow. Every month we are bringing it to you on third Friday without fail. And this time the book chosen is what the customer wants you to know, and how everybody needs to think differently about sales. And author is nobody other than one of the greatest management guru, Ram Charan. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hand together to welcome distinguished panelists for this evening. We have with us Srinivasan Ramaprasad, Director, CADD Center, great supporter of MMA. We do a lot of events with CADD Center. He will be leading the conversation with Radhakrishnan Vittaldev and Mr. Revele Selvan. May I request the distinguished to take their place on the dais, please. As usual, the format for this evening is, if you have any questions, keep it yourself, all the viewers watching this program. If you have any questions, please, there's a number going on your screen, just send it by WhatsApp. We'll be more than delighted to place that question before the panelists. They'll be happy to respond to all your questions. Before I'll hand over the session to Mr. Srinivasan Ramaprasad to take it forward, let me have the privilege of introducing the distinguished panelists. I can assure you, one of the top-notch panelists, not only now, every Read and Grow, we have been able to get some outstanding panelists because the credit goes to MMA, is not credit goes to MMA. We have the people who are working from the thing. We have Babu, we have other people who work from the front and identify the best of the books and best of the speakers, bring them here. We are putting so much of effort. I'm quite sure some of the people who are here, some of the people watching the program, pass on this message and tell them that if you miss this, so you are missing something. If you miss this, not to worry, our YouTube channel is there, revamped YouTube channel. It's got all the fantastic elements, what you want to know. Just click and watch of the company in a short span of 15 years. He's an active Rotarian, and I know he's doing some phenomenal work on Rotary. We had the opportunity to discuss that. Having led Rotary Club of Madras West on this 50th president, made the club more vibrant and interpersonal skills. Ramaprasad was also Vice Chairman of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce Tamil Nadu chapter, which is a chamber that promotes bilateral relationship between India and USA. MMA also does a lot of collaborative program with Indo Chamber of Commerce. Very warm welcome to you. It's a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Let me have the privilege of introducing our distinguished panelists for this evening. Radhakrishnan Vittaldev. Vittal is a fiber man actually. He's a fiber optic began in the year 2000, and when they signed with the Dishnet DSL for laying the fiber, and now we are the second largest. They are the second largest fiber optic provider in Tamil Nadu. And as an internet service provider, which helps the customers by relying on our common infrastructure, and hence the service are offered with ultimate quality and high flexibility. Imagine if you don't have a fiber net, internet, I don't think so many people are watching so comfortably and MMA working. I think hats off to the FiberNet companies. You are a real contributor to India's growth story. Radhakrishnan Vittal, also the managing director, is a brand of his own, very popularly known as RK, as he is popularly known as being an entrepreneur since the age of 13, and he's a first generation entrepreneur with over 30 years of business experience. Very warm welcome to you, Radha. It's a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Let me have the privilege of also introducing Mr. Revele Selvan. Revele Selvan is the managing director of Revele India Private Limited, Chennai. Is currently the MD of the IT company in the healthcare vertical, sales of over 100 crores annual. I know post-pandemic they must have done it fantastically well while all others have struggled. Earlier he was a VP of the benchmark system Chennai, which was sold to KLA, and lived 17 years in USA as a software engineer, then manager, and also then manager work on object-oriented software SAP application, and a number of other organizations. He's engineering graduate from NIT Trichy and Master of Engineering from Arizona University, USA. Other of interest is tennis, keen golfer. Golfer will be a good leader, I can assure you. Travel and music. Very warm welcome to you, Revele Selvan. Now let me have the privilege of handing over the session to our moderator for this evening, who will be leading the conversation to the speaker. Over to you, Ramaprasad. We are looking forward to a very exciting evening.
Thank you, Group Captain Vijay Kumar and the MMA for this wonderful opportunity. Good evening and warm welcome to all of you for this. This is a session on a book review, and I don't know how many have read this book already, what your customer wants you to know. This book was written way back in 2009, but still relevant today. I come from a complete sales background. That's the reason I chose this book, because I have seen the complete transformation of sales as a process pre-internet era and post-internet era. You would all agree that sales is one of the most important functions in any organization for growing the business. Are you with me on that? Yes. Yeah. Great. So, yeah. And pre-internet era, the large dependency was on the salespeople for sharing information, and they were dependent for the buyer really got most of the information from the salesperson before the internet era. But post-internet era, that scenario completely changed. You no longer are respected for your product knowledge or your service knowledge. You are not expected to share information about your products or services. Instead, you are expected to know what really the customer needs. Because today, if you look at a typical prospective buyer of yours, he is aware of not only your product, your competitor's product, your service, competitor's service. So he's not worried about how well informed you are about your own product or services. What he really wants to know is how well do you know about him and his needs and his wants. So that's what attracted me to review this particular book, which came well ahead of time. And for people who have been in the sales profession within their organization, you may have seen, like when we talk about sales, the typical thing that comes to the mind is, oh, sales, I don't want to sales. Most of the youngsters do not want to get into sales. Mainly for one reason, it is associated with the target. You need to achieve the targets. Consistently, month on month, year on year, you are measured on the targets. And so is the case with every other function. They don't realize that sales gives you the best opportunity for the growth. And because of that, people tend to avoid sales, but what they don't realize is they have the best opportunity to solve somebody's problem every time. And that's how this book is all about. So this book, what customer wants you to know, starts with a story of one Charles who was expecting his order from an already known client, and this order is very, very important to him to meet his target. and the D-Day comes, and he's waiting for this confirmation from his client, and when he receives the information saying, sorry, you're not getting the order, it has gone to your competitor. And he was shell-shocked. He didn't know what went wrong because he had a best of relationship. He had shared all the information he knew about his products or services, but still the client went ahead with his competitor. And that's how the whole story unfolds. And Ram Charan, in his own style, shares how you need to deal with your customers today compared to what you're doing earlier. So one of the concepts he brings about is value account program or value selling. You know, we normally don't know what really value is. So he says, hey, don't just tell about what you have to the customers, but also understand what the customer is looking from him. And how can you improve the business of your customer by getting closely engaged with what he's doing. So basically thoroughly know about his business, which means as a salesperson, you need to know about how the customer's business is running and trying to engage with each and every department of the customer's company and help him grow his business. And that's when you can actually get your business. So that's the primary premises of this book, how to get to know about your customer and how to engage or train your sales force to get to know that information so that they go and implement the same and then get the sale the way you want. Now, in the whole process, price becomes irrelevant. Most of us think price is the main reason for somebody to buy something, but when you follow this process, it becomes irrelevant. Okay, that is one of the great thing you learn in this book. So that is the basic context with which we are going to review this book. And I have two brilliant experts with me. Radhakrishna Vittaldev, who's been running his business for the last 22 years, and he is the man behind the fiber optic network in Tamil Nadu, and he has been connecting people. So if you are happily seeing your TVs or working in your network, he is the man behind work. So he will give his insights. And Mr. Revele Selvan, again, he has both, his primary business is with the US market. Okay, so he will bring us the perspective of how it is to do business with US market. Is totally different from the Indian market. So we'll contrast and see what kind of differences we have with respect to this process being applicable to the whole thing. So that is the insights we are going to get in today's review. And I'm sure at the end of the thing, you'll walk away with a lot of goodies with respect to sales. So straight away, I would start with RK and then move on to Mr. Revele Selvan. What are your key takeaways from this particular book?
Thanks, Ram. Ram Charan, as you know, has been a pioneer in terms of altering the belief systems of entrepreneurs. I think 2007, when he came out with this book, I can understand that it would have been far ahead of his time. I think we were all busy going after customers, thinking that price was the only motivator for a customer to purchase our product or our service. I think from there, a lot of multinational companies, when they started opening shops in India, they started with a slightly different approach. Small and medium enterprises have caught up as far as keeping the customer first in the last 10 years. I think this book has been a very good place to reckon for these entrepreneurs to go back and reflect. That's something that I found. 2007, when it got published, I would imagine that he would not have too many followers or too many people who agreed with him in this book. But today, 2022, you can see a marked difference in it, number one. Number two, as a person who heads a company that puts customers first, I think I specialize, or my company specializes in creating customers for life. a little different way of putting it across is creating partners instead of customers. If you want to look at that as a journey that we have gone through in the last 30 years of our inception, I can tell you that you would have had a lot of telecommunication companies who have come and who have gone bust or been bought over by a bigger company. But one of the key reasons why we've survived is by putting the customer first. I've personally read this book at least 10 years ago, and every part of this book has been a part of my everyday breath as far as implementing this. I feel that this has a lot of value for young entrepreneurs to take it into their system and not look price as your only driver of sales.
Okay. Thank you, RK. So now I will move on to Murugavel Selvan. And what are your takeaways from this book?
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and thanks, Ram, for having me here. I have a lot of friends, colleagues in the MMA, and it's good to be here and talking to all of you. So my take, like RK was mentioning, I did read the book when it first came out more than a decade ago. And when you called me to say that we're doing a book review on this particular book, I did go through it, a couple of days ago. And what I found really interesting is that whatever was said back then is very, very relevant even today. And the main takeaways that I see, and what you all should also know, is that sales is not just, go there and meet the customer and sell. It's also looking inward. And it's also helping with all the other departments within your organization. I think there's a perception that, sales guy, I'm a sales guy, you go out and be with the customer all the time, which is true. I mean, I always say when a customer says jump, the sales guy says how high. He doesn't question, he doesn't, ask, but at the same time, later on, we'll have to say how high does he have to jump? Why does he have to jump? I think there are a lot of takeaways in terms of sales has to look at their function as more of how am I going to add value, so it's not just cost, like Ram was mentioning, it's always not just price. Now then, the HR team and the operations team come into picture, because sometimes the sales incentives are all, tied to the costs, I feel, more of the pricing, but not the value add to the client. So sometimes the sales has to think, how do I get more value for the client in terms of even their top line? How can I increase their revenue? Rather than how can I lower my product cost? I think sometimes you can also increase their bottom line. So in that sense, you're not just explaining the product that you have or the service that you have and say, this is what we are selling and we will beat all our other competitors, but it is more about understanding the business. And I think that was a big takeaway from Ram, which we really follow in our company even today. I mean, our people go, the relationship is important, but that's just the stepping stone into the client, right? For small customers, yes, you do the sale over a one-on-one or, you get that. But as you start growing as a company, a lot of other departments are involved. And so sales actually becomes a key both internally and externally. And sometimes, with the engineering, product development, manufacturing teams, they have a key role to play in terms of saying, hey, our competitors are offering this, we're not doing this. So it's also about knowing what your competitors are and passing that information on to your internal teams. So now you start seeing that sales is not just about selling to the client, but it's about understanding where, the client wants to go in terms of their business. How is your product or service going to solve that particular issue that they're, I can give some examples where at Revele we do the back office for hospitals and clinics in the US. So both ends, that is with the doctor side as well as the patient side. Now on the doctor side, we do the billing for them, and we talk to the insurance companies and we get the claims paid back to the hospitals. But what we also do is say, hey, by the way, do you know that so many of your claims are getting denied because you're not using the right codes and you're not doing it correctly. So that's the value add that comes in. We're not just giving a product and saying we'll take care of it and we'll do the process, but we're also giving them information on what they need to do. And I think that is the premise of this whole book, where depending on what industry you are or what product you are, you have to know your customer and what they are doing and add value to their product. So I think that's a big takeaway that I see.
Wonderful. Thank you for that insight. Like when you have to know about your customer, the most obvious thing what you need to do is ask a lot of questions. You know, there is one thing which I don't find the current sales generation doing. So I would want to know from RK and Murugavel, what is your current view of the sales approach which is happening today? Are they more telling or asking and finding out what your business are? What has been your personal experience as a buyer?
Good question, Ram. I think today you have to understand that when I come and meet you as an outsider and I keep asking you 5 or 10 questions, are you going to give me those answers?
Not readily.
Not readily.
I need to trust you.
Correct. So that is the most important word over there. Are we investing enough time and resources on building the trust? Are we trustworthy? Is our track record proof that we can be trusted? That is the question that salespeople need to answer, number one. Number two is, as Murugavel pointed out, sales and getting more information from the customer cannot happen only from the sales team. It has to be a culture in your organization. Your culture, the organization should be fishing for information constantly, right? And for that, every person in your organization should be trustworthy in front of the customer. When that happens, automatically you'll be in a position to ask any number of questions and you'll be able to get feedbacks. Today, I think there's a huge lacuna when it goes to trust. There's a huge trust deficit between the sales team and the customer. I think that is my experience being handling sales for so long, and also being a customer myself.
Okay. Is it because of lack of trust? Is it because of the lack of knowledge of their own products or services, or lack of knowledge of what the customer wants?
More so, Ram, that most of the sales teams are in the business of hunting. They are not concentrating on farming, right? It takes a long time for relationships to be built, trust to be established. Sometimes it could take few months. In few cases, it might take even a couple of years. You need to be ready to wait for the harvest rather than going on hunting.
Okay, fine. Thank you, RK. And what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I think the question is, what is the approach to sales and how do you deal initially with the client? You need to understand that, you know, the sales process itself is very complicated in terms of, it is not about just saying these are the functionality of our products, because many times what tends to happen is you think your product or service is very cool and it's cutting edge, it's really the best in the market, and that's what you want to sell to the client. But the first step is to listen to the client in terms of where their pain points are. So rather than pushing your product or service, I would say listening is a very key aspect of sales, and it's very tough for salespeople to listen to their client, because they're always talking and they want to say this is good, that is good, they're not good. It's always a very I want to say that we are the best, but actually the best thing a salesperson can do is step back and in a room when you're starting the meeting say, so I'm here to ask you, what are your pain points? What is it that you're really struggling with? Where can we help you with? And once you ask that, once you say what is important to you, whatever is important to you is important to us. Now the focus shifts from you where you're the person providing that product or service to the client. We have this, and again, since it's a book review, there's this great book that you should read called Story Branding by Donald Miller, where they talk about, the owner of the product or service is not the hero or heroine of the movie. They are the guide. The hero or heroine of the movie is the customer. So don't think that, you are the top guy, you are going and selling it to the client and, hey, I have the best thing. It is being that guide. I mean, if you think of, if you're lost in a terrain, we have these GPS systems now. It's like that, right? If your client is lost, not knowing what really even they want, and most people are like that, they're trying to figure out things. And if you can be that guide positioning system, if you will, GPS, I think that is the kind of mentality you should have. I will take you to where you want to be. I have had that experience, but I first want to listen, to where your pain points are. And that's where, Ram Charan talks about value, and it's not about cost, it's benefits minus costs, right? If you look at what the value is, it's always benefits minus cost. Creating more value comes not just by lowering cost, but by increasing those benefits. So when you increase a lot of those benefits to the client, then the client is now thinking, oh, this guy is on my team. He's not looking at you as he's come here to sell something to me. It's a transaction. They're going to go away. He's going to meet his target, and they have this gold club, platinum club, and they're going to go away, have a nice party. It's not about that. It is about this long relationship and trying to be a win-win partner with you, trying to understand. So I think the sales approach has really changed these days. I mean, and it varies depending on who you have in the room, right? So the audience in the room, sometimes numbers will be very good for a CFO, but others are looking for other things, right? The CFO wants the numbers, but others in the room want to know how it's going to help their department. So I think you have to have a good mixture. And what we try and do is, and I'm sure a lot of you in the audience running your own companies, it's not just the sales guy who goes, but also an expert in the product or service, because you need to understand what the requirements are. So, you have to do that. There's a lot of understanding of what their requirements are. And then it's not about just selling a generic product or service to everyone. No matter how small anyone is, I think everybody is looking for customization. Everybody feels they are the most important customer. And that's something to keep in mind. There's this tendency to sometimes associate sales with, oh, I sold to this big guy, branding, I'm a big guy, I sold. But it's not that. Sometimes those are the people that won't pay you. I mean, all of you know about how you want to be associated with well-known companies who, really are using you for their purposes. It should be the reverse. They should be looking at you saying, hey, there's a lot of value you add here, and this is how we're going to bring it. And it's not a, one-trick pony. We're just going to come do the sale and move off. Here's the follow-up. I mean, we talked about the farming and the hunters. In our company, we actually have a client relationship with managers who sit with the sales guys. So we made sure that the sales guys are looking at the newer clients, and then there is a seamless transition. So a lot of things that will have to happen, and all this has to happen upfront. It's not wait till the contract is signed and then go deliver, right? Because you, in some cases, I've also heard this thing that you leave it to the sales guys, their mouth does the talking before the mind does the thinking, because they just say what the customer wants and they get away with it. So it's not like that. I mean, nowadays it's more about inclusivity of all the other departments and who is needed to add that value. So I think that's how it's changed now.
So people are transforming the way Ram Charan has projected it to be.
Absolutely. And I think, to the extent that salespeople have to think about, and we do this in our company, right? So when we talk to prospects, we need to know what their personalities are, what ticks their mind, I mean, what works for them. And those things become very key factors for the rest of the team to understand. And then we have to be collaboratively working on all those. And so there's a lot of data that, has to be taken, a lot of data that has to be shared. So it's not a very simple thing, just go and do the sale. I mean, there's a lot of associated, which we have to think about. Even, even from just getting into a little more detail, salespeople have to think, okay, the relationship is good, and to your point of somebody losing this sale, which was described in the book, maybe the salespeople have to give projections saying, here, I think if I'm expecting, say, a 20 lakh order, maybe the probability is 2 lakhs right now. Don't say 20 lakh is coming, because you're at the bottom of that sale. So you got to slab. So when you have had 2-3 discussions where they have had more buy-in, maybe you're at 10 lakhs out of that 20 lakhs. So even your projections to the finance department, now sales has a big role to play, rather than saying, I'm sure of this deal, this 20 lakhs, because at the end of the day, they may lose it, you won't even get the 20 lakhs. So if you know that it's at 2 lakhs or 5 lakhs or at 10 lakhs and progressively getting there, then you know that it's more realistic. So I think there should be a confidence level to the sales at what probability you're going to get, and share that information with the rest of the team. So I think those ways, I'm sure, approaches in sales will be changing.
Thank you for that. In fact, when you talked about it, I got reminded of one of the cases where I was working. I was in Bombay at the time. We had this company called Chemtex, which was supposedly loss-making, but they had their projects. So when we went into that company, we realized that they were using a particular set of equipment, around 10 numbers, and churning out some 1,000 prints every day, which we're in the business of printers. So when we went to the IT director the first day, he straight away rejected, saying that there's no budget. Please don't come, don't disturb. We are not going to buy anything for the next 1 year. But what we wanted to find out is, okay, they are already having 10 printers which are churning out at least 100 prints per printer, which is 1,000 prints every day. So if they're going to do it with our system, they straight away save 1/5 of the cost. So we did a calculation, and we were really shocked to see that they could save close to 1.3 crores in one year, right? So what we did, the next day we wrote to the CFO. Would you want to save 1.3 crores for your company? Yeah. That's the only statement. Immediately he called for a meeting, come over, and IT director was completely disappointed, or he was angry. Only yesterday I had rejected you, and you're coming back with some false claim. If your claim is going to be wrong, you're out forever. And thankfully, we had done our homework, and that 1.3 crores actually was accurate because of the calculations. And eventually they invested 20 lakhs, where they were able to allocate a budget of 20 lakhs to save that, 1.1 crore, basically almost. So this can happen when you try to understand what is really happening, instead of straight away dismissing. Like there are many people who dismiss, saying, okay, that's a loss-making company, they won't buy anything. But actually there is an opportunity to save 1.3 crores, so you can reduce your loss by that much, which is a gain for that company, for which I'm willing to invest 20 lakhs. And that's how, we were able to gain that particular contract. This again comes about only by being observant, asking relevant questions, and finding out what exactly customer is doing, so that you can help him out. Okay? Now coming to that, are the sales force really trained to take this approach? So one of the key things is, are the companies investing enough on the sales force to train them, not on their products or services, about knowing their customers? So what is your view on that, RK?
Ram, as you know, I think I come from a genre where I want to invest a lot of money on training, right? And I see a lot of value in investing money on training. But unfortunately, as far as sales is concerned, I think a lot of management pressure is put on quarterly results, right? And I don't think the salespeople are given time for farming. That requires a lot of training. So we are today looking at companies who want trained manpower, right? Easy to be picked out of another company that is that either are their competitors or from a different geographical location. So these guys want a easy fit in their organization. I think that is something that especially small and medium enterprises are working with today. I really hope that they invest a lot more on training. I'm not only talking about money, I'm also talking about time. Right? That way I feel that they will be able to see a larger goal that can be achieved.
Okay. So when you talk about training, is it about their products and services? Primarily, most of the salespeople are trained on a product and services and say, you talk about it. Just go and talk about it. Now, has that changed? Is the training happening more on knowing about your customers, developing your business acumen, and asking more questions rather than telling and giving just presentations? So that is the point. Of course, training is important. There is no doubt about it. But is it oriented towards what Ram Charan advises?
So the product and service training is a basic hygiene. I don't think anybody would not have a knowledge on the product or the service part of it. But I think there's a larger goal that the salesperson needs to be trained. That is on building a customer for life or a partner for life. That is something that the entrepreneur or the management or the team needs to work on. That's been my experience. I wish a lot of entrepreneurs spend more time on training the salespeople on achieving larger goals. I think Ram Charan's one book, if they are able to gift it to each of their sales members, would add a lot of value. I'm sure the next thing the sales guy is going to come and say, sir, please give me 1 week because I have to read this book. So, but that's the kind of impact that I'm sure this book will add.
Absolutely. Thank you, Arkan. What is your take?
Yeah, I think the question you asked is a good one. I mean, in terms of do they get training on the product and services? Yes. I mean, it's something you have to know because before you sell something, you have to know what it's capable of doing. And typically, salespeople always say it does everything, right? But they have to tone it down a bit to fit what your product really does. I think the other important aspect of training which you're alluding to and which we have started doing in the last couple of years is about the culture, right? So companies will have to spend time on their corporate culture or just their company culture on the soft skills side of things. I think many times we just don't give it as much importance. So having certain behaviors, being open, honest, transparent, all of that, and then talking about it, maybe spend 15 minutes a week with your team. I think those kinds of things help the salespeople to think about it because you need to understand that in sales, it's not all about just saying yes for everything the customer says, right? There's a lot of no. I mean, I think, sometimes salespeople do not want to bring up tough topics to discuss. And I think those are the times when such trainings help, where if it is a difficult conversation, the client is asking for something and it's something you can't provide and more so it's not going to benefit them, then there is a way of politely saying that it is not going to help both of us. And those kinds of, skills that you need to develop are very important because then the client is now going to appreciate you and say that this is where, what I know, but now you're telling me things that I don't know. So, telling them to stop, changing habits is very hard and telling them to change their process to do something else and that's going to bring them more money is going to be tough. But then when they see that, just like you were pointing out, they are going to appreciate you more for that. And typically salespeople, it takes them, it takes a lot of coaching and mentoring to have them say like, I disagree. And I think those kinds of skill sets is something that they have to develop. And believe it or not, clients do appreciate you more for being honest about, what they cannot do. And there's a lot of things that the sales guys have to learn more about, like I initially said on the listening side, where it's not all about being, hey, I have the greatest thing, but it's really stepping back and saying, we are the guide. I think it goes back and the culture side of things to how to behave to be that guide is something that you have to spend some training on. And I think management has to give salespeople some time off to go get this training. I mean, initially there will be that, hey, I'd rather go get some sales done. Why should I go for this? But I think it all adds up at the end of the day.
Okay. So training is important, and giving salespeople time is very, very vital. And not only giving them time, also guiding them along, coaching them is going to yield more results as you go on. So here Ram Charan has talked about knowing not only about one particular department of the client, but almost all the departments. So how easy it is in Indian context and the US context. Of course, Indian context, RK can throw some light. US context, you can, Murugavel. So how easy it is to penetrate or get information, because it's all about knowing, right? So one thing I have observed is people are hesitant to ask questions to start with. Like, do you agree with me on that? People are hesitant to ask questions because they think asking questions may be an offensive behavior. It's not so, it's more to understand the other person rather than questioning or interrogating the other person. Okay? So people hesitate to ask questions, so they go on assumptions. That behavior has to change to start with. So having said that, how do you see this being practical in Indian context, to ask questions and understand your client? What is, how easy or how difficult it is today in Indian market? Yeah.
More so, Ram, do we know to ask questions? Right? Most of our questions are not addressed properly. We don't know the tone in which to ask. We don't know the words to pick. We don't know the exact intonation that we need to make to ask questions. I think that is where all of us need to make. It's not only for the salespeople. I'm talking about even accounting, even billing, even accounts receivable teams. How many of us know to ask the tone to ask the questions?
I hope this question was okay.
It was all right.
Okay, go ahead.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. They don't even know how to frame it. Correct. But when you go to a sales meeting, or any meeting for that matter, with a prescribed questions, and when you are shooting those questions which are not the natural questions that are coming from your heart, the customer or anybody who's sitting there, because let's be really honest, we are talking about smart people who have been hired by multinational companies because of their ability to manage things over there. Those are the kind of people who are going to sit across the table, right? They know whether you're genuine or not genuine. My assumption is, assuming they are written questions and assuming they are not genuine questions, please don't ask them, because you're only going to be offending. You are going to ensure that you're never going to get another appointment from them. Understood.
Customized. A script kind of a thing, yeah?
Understood. So what I sometimes do is I always say, hey, listen, I've heard what you have to hear. Can I come back to you with my observations or my questions in 3 to 4 days? I'm sure the customer is going to appreciate that. But that's not what we are trained to do, unfortunately. Right? Now, coming back to questions, a lot of questions, we only give a question that can be answered in yes or no. I don't think we know very well to frame an open-ended question, right? I don't think a lot of us know the concept of a rhetorical question, right? So we need to be genuine in our interest to know the customer, right? Worst case scenario, what is going to happen? You're not going to make a sale. It's okay. Right? Sometimes you're not the right fit for your customer. But having said that, just look at ways that you can add value to yourself. Right? Look at ways that you can add value to the end customer by asking him the right questions and getting the right information out. From my side, Ram, I'm always very, very curious, or I'm very, very interested to know that the customer is not making a buying mistake. Because from our side, as a telecommunication company, we need to invest a lot of money on the infrastructure. We don't want to have a customer who is going to take our service for whatever reason and then realize, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to do. So the customer is going to churn out. Ultimately, if a customer churns out, I tend to lose the maximum because it's my infrastructure cost that is sunk in, right? So when you are very keen about your customer not doing a buying mistake, I think there's a lot of genuine interest that you exhibit to the end customer. My questions usually revolve around making the customer understand or myself understand that he is not making a buying mistake. I would like to know why he has bought it from his existing service provider. I would like to know why he is looking at changing, right? Is that something that I can address? Is that some value that I can add, right? Price is a different concept completely. But today, I think one question that all the salespeople keep asking in every sales meeting, sir, what is the price you want? Right? The day that you have a salesperson who's asking that question, right? Two things. One, this guy is not the right fit. Second, the person whom this fellow is meeting, the salesperson is meeting, is also not the right guy. As you rightly mentioned, when the company or the management knows that you are going to be saving them cost or adding value one way or the other, they will create budgets, okay, in order for them to overcome their challenges. So I think the biggest question that we need to train our salespeople. Salespeople may not only be the sales manager or the sales executives, but anybody who is handling sales in your organization should be asking us, hey, what is your pain point? Right? The problem is we don't know, as I told you, how to ask that question. The minute somebody says, what is your pain point? What is your problem? Why should I expose my pain point? We have a policy of not expressing our pain point to a service provider. So that is the way that you overcome it.
Okay, so basically it's not easy because of the current skill levels.
Current skill levels,
okay,
and current mindset.
Okay. Murgal, what is your, I would also like to throw some light on your experience in the US market.
So I think, it's quite relevant, except that I would say in the US, things are, the business model is a little bit more mature. So people do understand that service providers also need to make money. A person selling product, whereas in India, sometimes it's always the, just doing business itself is good for you. You can use that to do business with others and use me as a marketing tool, which fortunately in the US it's not. But having said that, I think the problem where salespeople get stuck with the price is that they should have enough confidence from the management, from the owners, I feel, where they have the right to walk away from a sale as well if it doesn't make sense. Because I think many times they get caught in that I need to make this sale. But I will tell you that in our company, there are many sales which we have actually walked away from because it does not make sense for us, and we know it's going to be a losing proposition. So we'll probably have nice numbers to show as revenue, but probably cost-wise we'll be spending more and the EBITDA bottom line is going to be bad. So we know that there is a threshold there. And so in some sense, to increase our brand value, what we do there is we tell them, hey, this is not going to work, where we cannot do it at a price point below this. In fact, we will, even if you want lesser service, and we will even refer you to some of our competitors. So that way, we establish a brand above our competitors, saying, if you want that, you go to them and actually, point them to some of our competitors. And if they are just wanting to go down for the price and lower it to whatever price will work, they know that the service, and believe it or not, they do come back to you. So, walking away from a sale, we have had clients for 1 year, they would go with another client, and then they'll come back and say, you know what, it makes a lot of sense to pay that extra premium and go with you guys. So I think you as an employee, as a salesperson, as a company, I would say, have to be very confident about the quality of your product or service. If you yourself is not confident of your product or service, how is the client going to be confident? you need to really know that, hey, we stand for this. And it's okay to walk away. And I think that sometimes is hard to do, but if you do it, you will notice that the gains you have later on are far more. And to the other point of what else can you do to help a client, one of the things we do, again, in the software services in the healthcare industry, is that, providing a basic back office is something that all companies do. But in our case, for example, with big data and analytics and all of that being very important now, we actually tell the client, hey, if you're a cardiologist in Los Angeles and you're doing $100,000 of seeing a patient a month, so your revenue per year is 1.2 million, there are cardiologists that do $200,000. So because of common data, we are able to tell within an area what is the average that a cardiologist is doing in that city, in the state, nationwide, so that they have some benchmarks. So the more data you give to your clients based on where they stand relative to their own competitors, I think gives them that added value. So we do a lot of tools and reports like that where we add, and then over a period of time, those become customized reports that then you can go back and sell. So, it's like drawing them into things that they find the value in, and that's something you have to do your homework on and make sure that you give that value to your client.
So basically what you're saying is, of course, get to know about their market, about their competitors, feed them with the information so that they get value out of it and they get engaged. And one other important thing what Murugavel told is we should have the guts to reject a sale and stick on to the person whom you can serve so that in the long run you're going to benefit. So we are almost coming to the end of the session. So as a closing remark, what is very important for salespeople today is to orient themselves towards the customer's business, which means they need to develop their questioning skills and they need to develop their understanding the customer's business and then apply whatever they can to improve their customers' business. I think that is, if they go about doing that, the sustainability of the business is also there, and it is not as easy as I'm spelling it out. So continuous training is also required for this to happen, and it's not a one-time effort, it's going to be a continuous effort, but at the end of the day, you're going to be a profitable business, not only for yourself, for your customers as well. Like RK mentioned, it's a long-term relationship. So I'd like to have the closing remarks from RK and Murugavel Selvan, and we'll end the session.
Customer is king. Your questions are the gateway to his house. So ensure that your sales team is very well equipped with the right mindset, the right training, and the right tools to go and face the world. There is a lot of value proposition that we can offer. India is one of the fastest growing countries. Next year we are going to be surpassing even China. So which means we have so many people, we have so many citizens to sell, number one. Number two is we have so many enterprises who are going to compete to sell to these citizens. As a B2B enterprise, it is our responsibility to ensure that we take advantage of this challenge that is in front of us. I think Ram Charan's book, as I mentioned earlier, is ahead of its time. But then there's a lot of learning even today for students, for entrepreneurs, for sales managers, and for executives to implement and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, RK.
First of all, we all have to realize if there are no customers, there's no business. So, don't think your product is the greatest or your service is the greatest. I think, we all need customers. Having said that, I think the salespeople need to think that it's not always external facing. Sales is also internal facing. So spend some time within your company as well, trying to understand more about your product or service. That is going to help you. Vice versa, I would say for those not in sales, in management, in other operations, please think of the salesperson also as a very knowledgeable worker. I think Many times we don't want to give all the details to the salesperson. He's only in sales, or, he's just talking to customers. I think that kind of attitude is not the right way to move forward. I think they have to be an integral part of your company. Sales guys are ultimately there, the interface between the client and the company. There are in larger companies product managers and marketing, but typically sales is the first interface with the client. So internally also, a lot of you in this audience should give your sales team the importance of understanding what they need to do with the client. And ultimately, I think it's a collaboration between the sales, the client, and the internal teams. So definitely sales is moving more to the knowledge era, I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you, RK, and thank you, Murugal Selvan, for all the beautiful insights you gave to the audience. And thank you, audience, for the listening. And there will be a Q&A session now. Our discussion on the book has come to an end. Now we'll have a Q&A. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think a fascinating evening. We'll go to the audience first. Is there any question? We got a couple of questions online. We'll take them. Before that, the first choice, I think Babu is going to ask a question.
To all the panelists, fantastic. Sales has always been a fascinating subject on which I've been weak. So, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed. One quick question, entrepreneurs and iconic entrepreneurs like, Ford, Henry Ford said famously that the customer doesn't know, right? If I had asked the customer what he wants, he would have said faster horses. And Steve Jobs said the same thing. And Elon Musk said the same thing at some point. He said if I had asked the customer what he wants, he would have said a more fuel-efficient car, not necessarily a kind of battery car. So the point which I'm trying to make is Ram Charan is talking about knowing the customer better, and these entrepreneurs are talking about the customer doesn't know. So where is the contrast? Is there a set of products or solutions that are innovative where even you need to surpass, go beyond what the customer knows to serve? And what are those? Just demystify this for us. Any of y'all?
Yeah, I think I can take this question. So Babu, to answer your question, I think it's a very good one in terms of, the client is so busy doing what they're doing, and so that's all they know. They don't know really where the pain points are. But I think this is where, as a provider of the product or service, you have to draw upon your experience from other similar competitors. So really look at what you're doing for others, and the client is looking to you to be the guide. So, it's almost telling them that this is your roadmap, right? So you build the roadmap for them rather than asking them what is your roadmap. So when you go with that, that's the whole value creation in terms of, hey, we are there to guide you. You are the hero of the story, but we want to tell you where your next generation product or service should be. And I think to a large extent, people like Steve Jobs and Ford and others, that's what they're doing. They're going ahead. But at the end of the day, you also have to point out, what is needed, because they're still busy on the day-to-day getting what they need to do to be up and running. So I think a lot of it is on the provider of the service and product to show them the path. And I think that's where, you have to make that difference.
Anyone else? We'll move to the audience online. Yes, sir. Please.
Fabulous discussion, excellent moderation, excellent insights. Thank you so much for that, first of all. Two questions. One is about the ethics of sales. What's your view on how that has changed? What are some of the key nuances there over the period that we're talking about, let's say over the last 20 years or so? Because it's seen as hard sell, that was the earlier perception. Has that changed? Are there some nuances? And therefore the question is about ethics in sales. Where do we stand today? Number one. Number two is about client behaviors that might hinder sales at some times, So one of them could be that, unwittingly they don't know what they want, and that's one debatable theory. But I'm saying, acquired over a period of time, are there behaviors, are there mindsets from the clients that you wish were not there? You as salespeople wish it was not there, or that would change? If so, does a salesperson have any agency in that matter? Is there something that we as salespeople, we ourselves can do to change that behavior on the client's part? Two questions. Thanks.
Yeah. So on the ethics part, at least on the US side, I can talk to that, and I think it plays a big part, and especially in healthcare where we are in, there's a lot of what's called PHI, which is protected health information, and so there are a lot of laws nowadays that really bind you in terms of the compliance. So for example, you can't sell a product which is not HIPAA compliant, right? So it has to have cybersecurity, it has got to have encryption, so you cannot say that it has and then some hacker, just hacks into your product and then you're liable. So I think those have slowly, been crept into the system where I would say, a large extent now ethics is a big thing that people do follow, and we cannot violate we have to report breaches. I mean, there's a lot of laws around it. In the Indian context, I know, there's a lot of ways around how you get around things, but I think to a large extent it's also the trust and relationship, right? And if ethics plays a part there, I'm sure, maybe now it's a tactical win, but long term I'm sure there are repercussions. So, and your second question was on, just remind me.
Where the sales.
The behavior.
Unwittingly.
Correct. So I think if there being a hindrance, this is where that meeting when you have initially, what we do is upfront we say what are the requirements needed from the client, be it a change in a process or buy-in from higher ups, or they may not agree to it, but at least bring it out there. See, I think a lot of times to win the sale, you hold on to a lot of the things which you want to accomplish and then you throw it on them at the last moment. I think that is not the right way to go about it. The right way to go about it is to bring it upfront. As you all know, it's easier to have nice conversations, but the tougher ones are the ones which really add value. So that is where I think upfront, if you bring it up, maybe during the sales process you have more opportunities to address that. So you can, get them to understand why you need it. It's not going to be easy, but at the same time you can show them the opportunity cost loss that will be if that is not done. So I think bringing it upfront at the very beginning is one way to get rid of that hindrance.
I just have one to add for your second question regarding the hindrance. Again, it's a mindset of the sales team also. I don't think they know who the decision makers are. They keep knocking the wrong doors, right? And I don't know how many people have the guts to say, hey, listen, I'm not the decision maker. So and so is the decision maker. I don't think a customer says that. Nobody says that, right? I think that is one very big hindrance.
Yeah.
Again, going back, I don't think they are asking the right questions also.
And in my example itself, when I approached the director IT, he was anti-sales. He didn't want anything. But we approached the CFO and you open doors. So you can maneuver, or you are genuinely interested in helping the client, you will find a person with, you find a person who's really wanting to grow along with you. That's the thing. And of course, ethics has improved by far with the knowledge economy. Earlier, when you are dependent on knowledge with only the salesperson, things were not so good. But today, I think people are a lot more genuine, purely from the knowledge perspective. Yeah.
Great,
Good-
sir.
Good evening,
Now
sir.
we'll move to the online. Quickly, one last question, because number of online questions, we got a few more minutes only left. Please go
Thank
ahead.
you, panelists. You have a wonderful session from you, and it was mind-blowing. And my question is, how the technology has helped the sales process or the salesperson?
Of course, you have CRMs in place today where you could almost track any activity with respect to your client, right? And it also not only helps you keep track of them, it will also help you communicate with them at a much, much faster pace than what you're doing earlier. So you have a complete knowledge of the entire client captured in a particular CRM system. So even if somebody leaves your organization and somebody else comes, your organization is still in touch with the same client. That's how it is. One big benefit of technology to start with. If you can add on to it.
So technology is one of my sweet spots. So I bring in technology and sales together. So that's where I specialize, right? And what I've noticed is When we are talking about SAP and other CRMs coming into the system, they were only used by larger companies. Today, even the smallest company today, if it wants to reduce efficiency, needs to bring in technology into the play. CRM is only one small tool to that, right? I think there's several more tools available that will complement sales. But the point there is that there should be a very good implementing agency. Otherwise, what happens is technology is available, the entrepreneur is busy in his own way, or the leader is busy in his own way, and the technology gets brushed under the carpet, only for the purposes of compliance, but not for the purposes of reducing efficiency. I think today customers are able to appreciate the technology that is being used not only in sales but in every part of your business.
So at least you can track your salesmen where they are. We go on and watch a movie. Technology helped a lot. So we have got over 490 viewers are watching the program. Great. And we have picked up a couple of your questions and I'll place it before the panelists. The first question addressed to Mr. Murugavel is from Ravi from Chennai. What do you want to say? What's the selling skills you require to sell products in USA? Is it more demanding than in India?
So to answer that question, I think the awareness is a lot more in the US, and I would say that they know specifically what they want. So I think there's a lot of customization. I think in the US you cannot sell a generic product, or a service. It has to be tailored to that particular client. Whereas, again, I'm not speaking to everyone here, but in India you tend to sell a product or service and then later on look at customization. But in the US, even at the initial stage, it has to be customized to the client. So in some sense, in the US, the client is more aware of what he or she needs. So, to Babu's point of not knowing what they really want, I think sometimes in the US, they really know what they want.
Customer do a research before. Excellent, sir. Yes, Mr. John from Trichy. Any one of you can take this question, sir. The concept of customer first or the employees first. If you understand the employees well, the customers are automatically taken care of. Is it true in the present environment where the customers well wired with the social media and make or break the ecosystem?
If I may go.
Please.
I think somewhere you need to look at your employee as your first customer, right? Because they are your brand ambassadors. They are as much your brand ambassadors as your clients. So it works both ways. When you look into a customer ecosystem, you cannot remove your employees in a different basket while you're looking at a customer. So they are a different kind of a customer, but they are your customer at the end of the day.
Could happy employees produce happy customers?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we have seen it. We have seen it happening because we developed a culture of speaking the same language. So it doesn't matter whether you're the owner or the front line, you speak the same language. So when your client talks to anybody within the organization, if they are aligned with the vision of the organization and they are happy, they are going to speak the same language, and the client, your client will not differentiate between an owner and a frontline person. And that's the best culture to develop, and that comes about with only happy employees.
And just to add to what RK said, I think being that first customer, you'd rather your employee find out something wrong about your product or service than the client. Okay. So from that sense, I think having your employees be more involved with your product is better than just allowing it to the client. So I think very true that all employees have to act like that customer.
Excellent.
And
yes, another question from Mr. Sridhar from Chennai. I think you all spoke about building trust actually. How tough is it now when social media plays an important role to make or break your brand? People more go by a few opinions which are expressed, which is at times very get influenced. How do you safeguard your trust which you have built over a period?
I think that's a very relevant question, and also with the last few years with the pandemic, people not having the opportunity to go meet customers in person. One of the things we have done is, make it a point for the client success team or your sales team to actually have that conversation at least once a week with your client, even though you may be, interacting otherwise or hearing from them through technology, like what RK was mentioning. Just having that personal connect has to be there, and given an opportunity, if you can meet with them in person, then at least do it, if not once in 6 months, once a year at least. I think you should do it.
You would like to add anything?
I would like to add, see, it is always possible that one of the customers can be unhappy, or somebody who puts it in the social media could be an unhappy person. So don't leave him in that same state. Go and address, you go and address them. See, what builds trust is not your product or services, it's your care. How much you care about them. Something may go wrong. After all, we are humans, so something may go wrong. But if you leave them in the same state without taking care, then it will do a bigger damage. Otherwise, you can build back the trust. I have one example to state, like one unhappy customer in Hyderabad. He was totally annoyed and he said, I won't do business with you, kind of a situation. All we need to do is go and meet him, confront him, listen to all he said, and he said, listen, it is one-off mistake we made and we are totally apologize for the same thing. But do you think a company like ours would willingly do something like that? Then he got convinced, and eventually we made him give a testimonial at the end of the meeting. So that transformation can happen. So my message is, don't leave a customer dissatisfied without taking any action. Address him immediately, and the same person can put in the same social media good about you. I think that will change this perspective.
Yes, moral story, even midnight, if you find a social media post, better attend to it immediately. One last question before we let you go, sir. Got another 3 minutes to go. Is from Sriram from Bangalore. Sir, you mentioned about you walk away from the sales opportunity. Sir, how do you fix a mandate in these circumstances for a salesman to take a call? What is the benchmark? Otherwise, you blame the salesman that he failed miserably.
Yeah, so I think this is where, the sales team has to be an integral part of your management team, if you will. The operations, your senior management, everyone, right? Either you can look at a bottom revenue kind of thing, they have to have a minimum set of revenue. Otherwise, many times we end up spending, whether they're a small customer or big customer, relatively equal amount of time. And we all know that, working with larger customers are better bandwidth for you in terms of the profits that you will make. But I think setting some boundaries on revenue could be one. The other thing could be the fit. And this is where, you need to know a little bit more about the client, which specialty they're in, or how are they going to interact with you. And you see some red flags, then again, those are things that you should have discussed beforehand, where, so either it could be a revenue issue or it could be some other fit issue with providing them that product or service. But definitely, those parameters is something the salesperson has to know, that within these boundaries, they have the right to walk away.
Very, very important, very important. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to our distinguished panelists this evening. Fascinating evening. Thank you, Mr. Ramaprasad, leading the thing, and Vittal, as usual, you're fantastic. Revele Film, so good to see you and lovely. I request Babu and Raja to please step onto the stage. We'll do the honor of presenting a memento. We are giving them some more book to read again this evening. Come, can you step forward? No. Come. Come.
Yes, so I think that one is very well done.
Thank you. Come. All of you. Thank you so much. We can have a full picture. Thank you. Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All viewers watch this program live. Thanks for your questions. Appreciate it. And please do watch tomorrow's event, and it will make quite a lot of difference in your lives and the lives of so many social entrepreneurs. See you. Bye-bye. Take care. Till we meet again. Good night. Take care. Protect yourself against COVID. Thank you. Good night.